Hello, and welcome back to the fourth episode of Start Your Spark, an online entrepreneurship program that helps you devise your first business. So, for the fourth episode, I really want to delve into the concept of research and how to mitigate the risks that you devise and realize from the research that you have done. The first thing to realize is that entrepreneurship and the essence of business is targeted towards people. Your audience are the people who determine whether you can be successful or not. Their reaction to your product or anything that you do is essential in your success. Let's take an hypothetical case study for today. Imagine that you are starting a nonprofit organization for a town in the Middle East called Al Desert. And this town is lacking in water. Therefore, you think that it's the perfect idea to build some wells in Al Desert so that the locals could have access to clean water and they could stop suffering from the diseases that they face till this day. Taking this hypothetical case scenario, let's implement the 3 steps that we are going to go through in this video to help them and help you mitigate the risks within your business. So the 3 steps I really want to address in this video is first, how to identify the risks within your business. The second step is, how do you research after you identify these risks? And thirdly, how do you mitigate these risks after you identify them, research them? Now let's go on to how to identify these risks. I think the most important thing to do within a business, and the fact that you're dealing with people, means that you have to evaluate 4 factors. These 4 factors go like this: social, economic, political, and environmental. These are the 4 staples of entrepreneurship. So how do we tackle each of them at once? So first, you need to identify what are the social risks. These are, how are people affected by your entrepreneurship? So taking an example of trying to build a well, so how far is the well away from people? This could be a potential problem because if wells are spaced too far apart from each other, people would find it a struggle to try to access the wells. And it might be very difficult to walk for long distances in Al Desert under the stifling heat. Therefore, that is an issue you can consider. To identify economical problems, you can go by the idea of how would it affect the economy if I decide to build a well. So let's say that you are a nonprofit organization, but you also rely on part of Al Desert's funds to try to build these wells. So let's say if these funds that Al Desert would be able to provide to you would absolutely cripple their economy, would it be worth it? Would it be worth it to find more sponsors? These are a few issues that you must consider beforehand. Next is the political factors. So let's say that hypothetically there has been historical conflicts in this region of Al Desert on who would be in possession of the water supply. Let's say that 2 neighboring cities are also trying to access the underground waters. So how do you mitigate that? Realizing that this is a problem, how do we solve the historical conflicts that plague this region of Al Desert? And lastly, what are the environmental conflicts and the environmental issues that we need to solve when we're approaching this question? So it is very common that if you are trying to build wells, that you might affect the underground life and livelihood of many animals. Similarly, it might be you might need to use a lot of natural resources and manpower, and this might take away from the ecosystem of the surrounding area of Al Desert, and this might be very negative and have very negative impacts within this surrounding area. So this is how you identify the risks. Let me reiterate: social, economic, political, and environmental. Next, let's move on to the research aspect of this video. Let me remind you, first of all, that most research that you ever need to do comes from communications with other people. So let's take the original example of you are trying to build a well in this part of the world called Al Desert. So what is going to happen? We always go back to the 4 main factors: social, economical, political, and environmental. So what are the social aspects of the research that you need to do? Well, first of all, you need to communicate with the locals about what are their actual needs and demands in building a well. What are the main reasons behind why they might need the access of clean water? And how much do they need of it every single day? And how much manpower is available for you to build this well? And how many volunteers are there who are willing to put in the work? These are a few things that you might consider. Next, moving on to the economical aspects. So it's very important to do some thorough research, this time not just through communication with the government there, with the treasurers, but also with the ideas of, hey, let's do some calculations and how much the well construction might cost. It might be good to provide a price range between, hey, it might cost between $100,000 and $200,000. And working within a budget is very, very important as a result of productive and positive research. So the next part is not political, but more looking at case studies overall. This also integrates environmental factors. So you can look at case studies of how to navigate fragile ecosystems. Let's say that comes as a part of your hands-on research. You realize that there is fragile ecosystems in the surrounding areas of our deserts. So how do you use case studies from other people next to this country, maybe that they have also managed to devise plans to build wells? And how did it function? How did it end up? Was it successful? Was it a failure? And how can you learn from these case studies? And last, and what I think is most important, is consult some experts, because you got to realize that many times it's better to speak with someone who actually understands the sociology, the ecology, the political and historical factors that go into building a well in a foreign country to you. So, last, how can we mitigate these risks? I would take two examples. So let's say that, coming back to the example, back in your research, you realize that there is a very fragile ecosystem within next to the surrounding area of our desert. So I would say that, first of all, the most obvious thing that you can do to mitigate these risks is to build wells in other areas, right? You're not going to choose area A, then you're going to choose area B. However, this poses more problems, right? Let's say area A was a perfect place because many locals were close to the places that they can reach there by walking distance. So let's say if you have to place the well in area B now, what are some water transport systems that you can implement? Let's say that you can actually start a business there. Let's say water transport, where there are trucks that transport the water from the well to the houses of individuals every single day. But also the financial aspects of that needs to be considered. This is one way you can mitigate the risks. A second way you can mitigate the risks is maybe devise transportation systems, such as, potentially a train that leads the locals from their houses to the place they're trying to get to. These are simple transportation ways that you can help mitigate the risks and the problems that might arise from a fragile ecosystem. So let's take another example. Let's say that you have water contamination that you realize in your research. So what is the most obvious thing you can do? You can devise a budget where you can buy advanced water filtration systems, which would help you get the disease and bacteria out of the water. Alternatively, you can also advance the healthcare within the community, build some hospitals, get some doctors who understand how to treat patients with diseases from water. These are a few ways that you can mitigate the risks and problems posed by your research. So there we go. In this video, we covered 3 very important things: how to identify the risks, how to research into these risks, and how to mitigate these risks. Always remember the 4 main factors when doing your research and analyzing your risks: social, economic, political, and environmental. Thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.